After being heavily linked with Red Bull, it seems like Lando Norris is headed in the totally opposite direction, Ferrari. The Maranello team is struggling to keep both of its drivers satisfied, and considering how critical they were for the team's last few races, there is a huge opportunity that when their respective contracts end in 2024, we're likely going to see them pursue Lando Norris. Ferrari is being considered a conservative team right now, but while many are quick to bash the team for their lack of performance, it could be that the drivers are unable to extract the maximum out of the car, one of the main reasons why Leclerc or Sainz could be replaced by Norris as soon as 2025. Ever since Ricciardo's move to AlphaTauri was officially announced, the silly season has started, and we've seen some moves from the top teams on the grid. Although Ricciardo signing a contract with AlphaTauri essentially means that he's ready to fight with Perez for the second seat in Red Bull, things took a massive turn when the Austrian squad announced that they want to build a super team in the near future and bring Norris alongside Verstappen. And while this is yet the scenario in which Red Bull believes and strongly suggests could happen, Norris has just seen another door opening in front of him, Ferrari. Yes, the Maranello team is not the one that he would prefer if you were to tell him that Red Bull are looking for him, but considering the fact that the SF23 and the F175 have proved to be one, if not the fastest cars on the grid on several occasions, and it was mostly strategic and driver failures that led to the disaster at Ferrari, this might not be the worst option for the Brit. What goes heavily towards this scenario actually happening is the fact that Norris might have finally understood that he can never be the number one in Red Bull. Hence, there is no point in trying to beat Verstappen in the same machinery because, more or less, he would always be the prioritized driver in their duels. Marco did speak highly of Norris in the past couple of weeks, saying that he and Verstappen are one of the best friends on the grid. And if Red Bull were to sign any driver, it would be the youngest of the superstars, Norris. But there are two scenarios that Norris needs to consider before putting pen to paper on a potentially Red Bull offered contract. The first one is the current upgrades on the MCL60, one that saw him match his career-high P2 finish from Monza last year, and the second one is the treatment of the second driver in Red Bull. Apart from that, the current unrest in Ferrari is highly linked to Leclerc's inability to bring the car where it's supposed to be, which is very likely to be the cause of all of the issues. And whenever the driver cannot tell exactly what's wrong with the car, the engineers back in the factories have a limited amount of data to work on. If you were to compare the data feedback from Verstappen and any other driver out there, you will notice that Verstappen has this sixth sense of noticing issues that even the engineers cannot convince him exist. But when the car is torn apart, it turns out Verstappen was in the right all along. With how McLaren has been uprising with their form lately, especially with Norris from Austria, as he notched P4 and P2 finishes in Spielberg and Silverstone respectively, I don't have a single ounce of doubt that he would be this fresh energy in Ferrari that could bring them back to their winning ways. And right now, F1 journalists believe that Norris has signed a pre-contract with Ferrari once his time with McLaren ends, which could see him reunite forces with his old friend and teammate from McLaren, Carlos Sainz. After all, it's very likely that Sainz has held talks with Norris and explained the difference between driving for McLaren and Ferrari. And although it seemed like he did the wrong thing back in 2020 when he signed the contract for the Maranello team, it's now evident that Ferrari has a much brighter path than McLaren. Although the Woking-based squad are yet to deliver the best out of their 2023 challenger with the latest upgrades. But even Norris doubted that the team could hold on to this pace for much longer and believes that the track-specific Silverstone circuit has delivered good results. Obviously, it's a disappointment for the fans, but it's also a reality check for Norris, who started the season on a very bad note, and while he has increased the competitiveness in the sport in Silverstone, it's highly unlikely McLaren can keep up with Red Bull in such a close manner before the regulations end. Right now, there are talks that Red Bull is behind with the 2026 technical regulations, and the two teams that are far ahead in the technical aspect of their new engines are Ferrari and Mercedes. With Norris's contract ending with the Woking-based squad in 2025, it could very well mean that he will sign a contract with the Maranello team, especially if Leclerc is approached by Red Bull in their bid to form a super team from 2025 onwards. This is something that Joe Saywood, a renowned and esteemed F1 journalist, believes in, and while he's been laughed at for projecting Norris in Ferrari, he shared his own train of thought as he elaborated. Norris and Albon were the subjects of widely diverse rumours about the future over the weekend, with both being mentioned in connection with Ferrari and Red Bull. Whether such moves make sense for either man is open to question, but there are some who believe that Lando may already have some kind of pre-contract with Ferrari. I cannot see that as being a logical career path, given where Ferrari currently is, but then going to Red Bull and trying to beat Max Verstappen is also a career path from hell. As Saywood already said, beating Verstappen in the same car will be a mission in which Norris is very likely to fail, unless the circumstances change massively and he's the one bringing more points home than the Dutchman, a scenario that's very unlikely to happen, considering that Verstappen has more experience in winning races and championships with the car compared to Norris. Obviously, surprises can always happen, but with Norris driving for Ferrari, there could always be room for improvement in the Maranello team, and here he could be the alpha male, and he could score the wins that Leclerc and Sainz are desperately missing out on. Recently, Norris was asked whether or not he had talked with Ferrari about a new contract from 2025 onwards and a potential collaboration. But he hasn't been that open to this mission just yet, as he said that he's trying to win races, not to go to therapy classes right now. Yes, it was one of the harshest responses possible, but what Norris might have hinted at is that until Ferrari has the current structure, there isn't any place for him in the team. That's very likely to change in the near future, because Ferrari themselves also understand that there is a lot more than what they're doing right now, and quite frankly, I don't see them not changing in the next season, or even sooner, in 2023. For 2 consecutive years, we've seen Ferrari struggling to develop a proper driver's lineup, and even though there is a lot of hope in Sainz and Leclerc's missions, there's always disappointment in their performance, something that not even Vasseur was able to fix. What Ferrari desperately needs to understand is that they need a 180-degree change in direction, and that might not just be around the engine and the tacticians, but their driver lineup as well. Norris has been constantly praised by Hamilton for his expertise in the sport, and now that the 7-time world champion has committed to Mercedes, I guess the closest thing they could get to mimicking his presence in the team is Lando Norris. As of now, the cards are closed for this scenario to happen, but that doesn't mean Ferrari won't look into their options in 2023. Of course, there's always the case of Norris opting out for Red Bull and believing that in the same car, he and Verstappen can fight it out properly on the grid, but that scenario might be shut down in a couple of races, as it was with Perez in the first couple of races. With this in mind, there's a lot on the table for Norris, and if he doesn't choose carefully, he might see his career go down the wrong path. Right now, McLaren seems to be the best solution for him due to the massive step they made in the strictly regulated era of development. So, if they're able to follow up on their upgrades in the next couple of races, then rest assured that Norris will squash the rumours of him going anywhere besides the Woking-based squad very quickly. But if we're to trust the chit-chat around the paddock, Norris has been offered a contract from Ferrari, and it's up for him to accept or deny it.